I'd heard through somebody else that they were going to design a new chair, and they were taking kind of RFPs on designing this chair. And I didn't know what an RFP was, but I went in anyways. I thought I'd charm him into it or something. Anyway, and he said, "Well, thank you." He said, "Why don't you show me the other chairs that you've designed?" And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy doesn't understand. Not only have I not designed any chairs, I haven't designed anything else, right? It's like to speak of. So it's not like my portfolio's weak in chairs, it's just weak.
This is the Design Better podcast. In this season, we're tackling what it means to be a product-driven company, to use human-centered design and strong collaboration between product, design, and engineering teams to make great products. This podcast is hosted by Aaron Walter and Eli Woolery and is brought to you by Envision, the world's leading prototyping, communication, and workflow platform. David Kelley doesn't like to claim to have come up with the term design thinking, even though most people would probably say he did. But regardless of who coined it, as founder of IDEO and the Stanford D.school, he's been one of the most influential proponents of design thinking and human-centered design in general. When it comes to bringing together engineering, product, and design teams early in the design process and aligning those teams towards a common goal, design thinking has few equals, and it should be part of the toolkit for every product-driven company. In this episode, Eli and Aarron speak with David about what it takes to bring designers and engineers together, how our workspace influences our work, and how we can encourage creative confidence in our companies. Enjoy their chat with David, and thanks for listening.
I've worked with lots of search firms, both as a leader searching for new talent for my teams, and as an individual exploring new steps in my career. But I trust none more than Wirt & Company. Since 1995, Wirt & Company has been the design community's most trusted search firm, co-founded by a designer and led by a CEO who has in-house operational startup experience. Wirt & Company is guided by the principle that creative leadership is essential to business success. They've helped some of the most admired brands from early-stage startup to Fortune 500 build world-class creative teams. We're talking about companies like Airbnb, the New York Times, the Four Seasons, Notion, Figma, Google, Cartier, and Fair. Not bad. If you're looking for a partner to help you find the right person for a critical role, look no further than Wirt & Company. And if you're looking for your next design leadership role, Wirt & Company will guide you through the process as a friend and a champion throughout your journey. They take the time to get to know you, to understand what you need professionally and personally. Whether you're looking for your next role or your next team member, Wirt & Company can help you find a meaningful relationship. Visit wirtco.com to learn more and get in touch. That's WERTCO.com. Support for Design Better comes from Gusto, who make running a small business easy. Get 3 months free at gusto.com/designbetter once you run your first payroll. Running a small business is hard work, especially all of the payroll, quarterly tax filing stuff, and HR things. I'd rather be focused on my business and my customers than dealing with the administrative duties. But Gusto makes it easy. They automate the complicated parts of running a business. With Gusto, I never miss federal or state payroll tax filings. And I love the time off requests and time tracking tools. Gusto even offers a small group health insurance option for nearly any budget. When you run into issues you need help with, their HR experts are ready to help. It's a very well-designed product, easy to use, and great emotional design that will put a smile on your face. Design Better listeners get 3 months free once they run their first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/designbetter. That's gusto.com/designbetter.
So, hey, David, good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for being on the show. I've got David Kelley here with me, and we're at David's office at the Stanford D.school. David's the founder of IDEO and of the D.school. And back in the day, back in the 90s, he was my advisor. So I've known him for a little while. And really excited to have him here. And David, we're going to go through a few parts of your story. But one thing that I'm curious about is this term design thinking. And I think the concept of design thinking probably predated maybe even both of our tenures here at Stanford. But there's some folks, Tim Brown included, who I think said that you maybe coined the term. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how the term design thinking first started to spread.
Sure. I don't know if I coined the term. Certainly, probably didn't. Other people have put those two simple words together before. I mean, it was certainly an original moment. And the way it happened was my students, being designers are kind of broadly focused, let's say. They're like me, they're design junkies. They want something new, try something they never heard of before, rather than getting deeper and deeper into one subject. And that was good, except when it came time to getting a job or something. You remember this. And, everybody, they were kind of confused because everybody else had a depth. And their depth was, how to routinely come up with new ideas, right? And that doesn't really work on your business card. I'm an expert at coming up with, innovating routinely, right? At least it didn't then. It's closer to becoming be true now. Anyway, and so they did fine. Like Eli, like yourself. But there was that moment. And so they kept, it kept bothered me that I couldn't make them feel better. And so I kept saying, you're expert at design methodology. That's what you're expert at. You're not a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer. You're an engineer, but your superpower is how you kind of routinely come up with new ideas and stuff. And that went along for a while and just didn't make any progress. And then it just happened one time. I said, this is a way of thinking. I mean, what you have, you're a design thinker, design thinking. And so in my life, anyways, that's how it got started, it was the notion that we were a much bigger deal than just our hands. I mean, those of us who love to shop, as we all do, we're kind of thought of as, the kind of grubby maker types, and we're not big thinkers, right? And so somehow that it took off that the notion that thinking in the way a designer thinks is a way that could actually contribute to the world, that it's an approach that's a bit different. And so it's liable to come up with new ideas. And that's when people started looking for, okay, how am I going to innovate? There's this, I love this IBM survey with 1,500 CEOs and said, what's on your mind? And they said, basically, I'm trying to make my companies more creative. And they looked around and we were just standing there, and it was great. I mean, we moved from the kids' table to the adult table because of design thinking.
That's interesting, because what Eli and I keep seeing throughout the industry is design thinking has become something much bigger than what it was originally intended to be, as this tool for understanding the methodology, a tool that really helped designers focus on their work, get clarity about how to get to the best solution. But now we hear a lot of CEOs, VPs. It's a way into design. It's a way for them to understand design and start to embrace it. And it's become this it's almost like the Jolly Roger in corporations, where you fly this flag of, we're going to try to turn the tide and make this company more focused on design, to think about design more holistically. It's like this inroad into design for people who don't fancy themselves designers. How did that happen? What's going on?
Sure. Well, I think problems got very complex, with all of the stuff that's going on in the world, and the, kind of the globalization of things, and technology moving at the pace it does, and so forth, that, the problems are quite complex. And so, the kind of stay at home, one discipline attacking a problem just hasn't been as effective as when you can get multiple minds with different points of view together and actually work on those kind of problems. So the beauty of design thinking and design in general is that it's human-centered. So what I found was, the way it happened for me was that, there's lots of people talking about multidisciplinary, all this kind of stuff, but it didn't really happen. I mean, we would go to a meeting and it was supposed to be multidisciplinary, and we kind of divide up the money and go do what we were going to do anyway, But because I believe that because our methodology is so human-centered, that no matter what the group is, you get the manufacturing guy and the business person and the philosopher and whatever you got on your team, and you get them together. As long as you focus on the human, that's something that everybody can get behind. You have this sense in business terms. You kind of frame the problem from the customer's point of view. You're now and that's relevant to everybody, as opposed to you frame it from a technological point of view, frame it from a business view, that excludes, several of the disciplines. But if you frame it from the human point of view, then everybody can sign up. And I think that's what's happened, is that methodology allowed for real multidisciplinary kind of radical approach to these big problems. And it's the only way they're going to get solved.
So given that sort of human-centered bias and that interdisciplinary focus, are there any recent stories that have surprised you about the power of design thinking to change things in large organizations? Yeah,
no, there's just so many where it's happened, and there's different companies that's just bought the whole deal. SAP, Intuit, companies like that are really focused the company around design thinking and that kind of being able to routinely innovate, put a bunch of ideas on the shelf and then choose from them. When you said it, my IDEO does about 400 projects a year, and then there's all these ones at d.school. So I'm always surprised when somebody asks me a question like that. Which one pops into my mind? And when you said that, for some reason, Liberation Technologies popped into my mind. This is a group that I'm very proud of students that went to Nairobi, Africa, and they were kind of sponsored, and they were like working on fire prevention. And so before they immersed, they were thinking about fire prevention. That's what we do. We sit around in a room with our laptops open and think we're so smart, and we try to solve the problem that way. It's just kind of a waste of time, but we do it. And then when you actually immerse yourself in the culture, the design, the need finding, the empathy work that we do, you start to actually come up with kind of non-obvious things that are really worth, that have real value. So in Liberation Technology, we're working on fire prevention. They go into the villages in Nairobi, Kenya, and they think they're going to keep these, kind of shanty buildings from falling down. But when they actually get into it, they kind of build this empathy, and they realize that what people are really worried about they're worried about the fire, but only to the extent that it ruins their documents, burns their documents. What they're very concerned about, their need, their non-obvious, really gut need, is that that these documents allow them to stay in that building, they allow them to stay in that country. They, they can get arrested if they don't have them. I mean, it's just like the documents are so important than these pieces of paper, right? And so the students, some of them worked on fire prevention, but once they kind of used our principles and really understood stuff, they decided that the main thing to do was to deal with these documents. And so they got pickup trucks and put scanners in them and drove around and scanned the documents and put them up in the cloud, and then proved to them that they could pull them down anytime they wanted. And that was so that kind of pivot to where the real human place is, to the meaningful place, to the people that you're trying to design for, is just it's so cathartic. And once you latch on to that, that you have this insight about what's really going on here and what good I could really do. And it could be in a commercial company. This happens to have a social component, but you get to that point where you have conviction that you have an insight that is kind of emotional, meaningful, human, right? And then, then you're off to the races. Because then you just have to take the risk that you can find a technology that'll solve the problem, and you have to take the risk that there's a business approach that will actually make impact. But I'd much rather take that risk than the risk of I got a technology and then I hope people like it, right? Otherwise, we'd all be riding Segways if that was
right. Yeah, absolutely.
David, I like what you said about diverse perspectives being really important in design and bringing a lot of people together. And those diverse perspectives could be from our, diverse in, our origin story, where we grew up, the way we see the world. It could be our technical or, our craft could be diverse. And in your TED Talk, you talked about creative confidence, that it's something that you feel very strongly that more people need to be encouraged and that creative confidence needs to be built up. And we've seen in a lot of companies where, as design is starting to spread throughout the company, there are people that are kind of resistant to being part of the process, people that have valuable, important parts to play in the design process. And one of the reasons why they're resistant is because they don't understand it, or they have this strong insecurity that I don't have the skills, or I don't have a place in this process. Can you talk about how in your work at the D.school, like with your students, or even your work at IDEO, how do you foster creative confidence? What can companies start doing to encourage more creative confidence so they can bring lots of different diverse perspectives together?
Sure. There's really two really interesting points that you make in there. One is about the diversity, and that diverse. I like what you said. The diversity of all way. I mean, the diversity of how you do things can be just as powerful as whether you're a male or a female, or if you come from a different country or whatever. But because what we're trying to do is build on the other ideas of the people to get to a place that you. If you have an opera singer and a philosopher and a doctor in the room and they're building on each other's idea, you're probably going to get to some place unusual because that's never happened before. That's the kind of thing. But yeah, we have. What's happened for us is that somewhere along the line, kids opt out of thinking of themselves as creative, and I talk about this all the time. But so your question is, how do you get them back? How do you get them back to that confidence so that they'll have. Once people have creative confidence, they have like more stick-to-itiveness, they take more risks, they do all the things. Well, what we believe is that the barrier between people, especially these people who have opted out of thinking of themselves as creative, it's fear. I mean, it's fear of being judged. It's fear that they'll look stupid. It's fear that they can't do it because, they have friends that are, can paint and play the piano and they can't. And so they have... there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all about fears, and that's where we can make the most impact. Once we decide it's fears and kind of decide what those fears are, then we use a approach that the psychologists call guided mastery. So you have fears, and we need to change those fears into familiarity. We need to get you off of the fear and get you into the kind of familiar feel of what it feels like to be able to come up with ideas, routinely innovate. And so all the psychology literature points to the only way to do that really is through a series of small successes, kind of baby steps. You're thinking of yourself as not that way, or you're skeptical, or you're standing back from joining in. And so what we have to do is we have to orchestrate you to have a series of small successes that results in you feeling that fear of being judged has gone away. And now you just, you can kind of let your ideas fly because you don't have that barrier. And the end result is creative confidence, or what the psychologists call self-efficacy, which is that you have a sense of the world and that you believe you can accomplish what you set out to do. And oh my God, think about how different the world would be if people had that confidence that they could do what they wanted to do, that it would succeed, they would succeed.
Mm-hmm. So great products, they have to do two things to be successful. They have to work really well, and hopefully they feel good to use. There's this emotional component to products that we love, that we want to tell people about and use often. But, often designers and engineers are at odds. They're sort of like right brain, left brain, kind of this classical dichotomy of two things. When they're combined and they work together, they're really powerful, but they often are at odds and have a hard time cooperating. What causes that, and how might we mitigate that and start to work together so we can create these balanced products that are very engineering, have solid engineering components, and they also are designed well and they feel good to use and they fit into our life?
Yeah, you really are really are breaking that down into three things, which is the kind of conventional design function, the kind of human computer interface, or the human, not the computer interface, but because it's not always a computer, although we're in Silicon Valley, seems like it often is. But you have the kind of design, the kind of magical bits of what it looks and feels like, but you also have the scenario of use and how easy it is to use, and does it make you feel comfortable using? So often something's hard to use, and the user blames themselves. So I'm so stupid, I can't make this ticket machine work or this computer work and stuff. And so there's there's that, and then there's the pure engineering, the implementation, the getting it done in a cost-effective way that it's worth having in the world because some people can afford to buy it, right? And so you have to really have all of those things going at the same time. Sometimes when we start a project, we have the business people go in first and try to understand how much the market will bear. Once we have a cost target, it limits all kinds of things that all the designers were going to do before. So sometimes we go in and come up with some extraordinary thing and then try to figure out how to reduce the cost or to make it effectively. So your question is real, and it's there. And you just have to convince everybody that there's a tension between those two things, right? There's a tension between extraordinary and sustainable, right? I mean, that is just there. And so I find that if both sides of that fight sign up to that it is a tension, we agree. Your stuff's important, my stuff's important, and we're going to try to figure it optimize. It's just a constraint that the other person's point of view has to be taken into account. And people actually don't mind constraints when they're kind of open-minded and sign up to it. So it's really it's a thing of a mindset that we're going to work together and how clever can we be to get what you want and what I want? How clever can we be maintaining the extraordinary bits of the design as we take it all the way through to getting it made? And I find that once the mindset of we're going to work together to do that happens, it seems to work. There's also a beautiful thing that's happened, of course, is that our focus on humans, our focus on users, means there's actually a higher authority. If you can get into a good cycle of prototyping and showing it, that in some ways it's nice. It takes the burden off of the fight of like, no, we should do this. No, we can't. It's too expensive. No, we should do this, that kind of stuff back. Because there's the user. I mean, if you have a customer council and you really trust these people that have helped you evaluate, kind of user testing, they actually decide for you. I mean, you hang a price tag on it. You go into a room and there's a price tag and you give people $100 and you say, what you going to buy? If the price is too high on your thing and they don't buy it, you got to go back and make it lower. If they love it to death and the price is they're not price sensitive, then you can push on the extraordinary side further, right? So, I mean, one of the things to do is to have an arbitrator in, if you want to call that tension there, then, find an arbitrator that both people sign up to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So having that arbitrator, the people that you're designing for, I think is really important. Is there also a power to the design process and getting teams aligned really early when they start product development?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talk about the importance of seeking out what you're trying to seeking out is something meaningful to the people that you're trying to help, right? And so by getting that alignment, it seems like even the kind of most kind of introverted engineer, when they go out and meet the person they're trying to help, and it becomes a passion, it becomes a cause rather than something on your to-do list. You got it. If you can get to that point where we get the project, the problem that you're trying to work on, a cause by the people doing it, rather than kind of data that they're manipulating in order to get to kind of an a solution that's kind of pedestrian but solves the spec, right? If it's a cause, then they're working on all kinds of things peripherally to that and stuff to make that go. So, sometimes it's harder than not, but I really think that's the key, is to get everybody signed up to understanding what it is that's inspiring about what we're doing, and then it kind of falls in place.
Support for Design Better comes from Uplift Desk, who help you work better and live healthier. Eli and I log a lot of hours at our desks, which can be detrimental to one's health if you're not paying attention to ergonomics. Uplift Desk offer high-quality, well-designed desks, chairs, and accessories to help you build an ergonomic workspace for home or work. Eli recently got a standing desk, and I got a human-scale Freedom chair. I've been dreaming about this chair for a long time, and I finally got one. I've already noticed a big change in my posture with this chair, and my body thanks me for it. Eli is logging a lot more hours standing than sitting these days, and he can make quick transitions with the flip of a switch. We love Uplift Desk, and we know that you will too. Design Better listeners can get a special deal by visiting upliftdesk.com and use the code DesignBetter at checkout for 5% off your order. You'll get free shipping, free returns, and an industry-leading 15-year warranty. Go to upliftdesk.com, use code DesignBetter, and get 5% off. Design a better workspace with Uplift Desk. Support for Design Better comes from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery. Design Better listeners can save 50% on their order at factormeals.com/designbetter50. Use the code DesignBetter50. You know what happens at my house when things get really busy? In the evenings, we turn to takeout, which can be expensive and it's not very good for our health. Lately, we're making a better choice at crunch time. We turn to Factor for chef-created, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. We like the flexibility of Factor too. You can change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. The meals are so tasty. My wife and I are huge fans, and I like their smoothies too, which I find are perfect for a quick, healthy breakfast. Factor can help you eat well and feel good while focusing on your career and your family. Head to factormeals.com/designbetter50 and use the code DesignBetter50 to get 50% off your order. That's code DesignBetter50 at factormeals.com/designbetter50 to get half off your order. Support for Design Better comes from Gusto, who make running a small business easy. Get 3 months free at gusto.com/designbetter once you run your first payroll. Running a small business is hard work, especially all of the payroll, quarterly tax filing stuff, and HR things. I'd rather be focused on my business and my customers than dealing with the administrative duties. But Gusto makes it easy. They automate the complicated parts of running a business. With Gusto, I never miss federal or state payroll tax filings, and I love the time off requests and time tracking tools. Gusto even offers a small group health insurance option for nearly any budget. When you run into issues you need help with, their HR experts are ready to help. It's a very well-designed product, easy to use, and great emotional design that will put a smile on your face. Design Better listeners get 3 months free once they run their first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/designbetter. That's gusto.com/designbetter.
David, when I visited the D.school a couple years ago, I saw something really extraordinary. It was it's just creative chaos everywhere. There's, the clear evidence that students were exploring, working through ideas. Things were being kind of pushed back and forth. And it's just an incredible energy in the space, even when there aren't people there. And when I visit companies, larger companies, or even startups, I see something very different. I see most of the time design ideas are trapped in computers, and on the walls there's beautiful murals, and there's snack bins and so forth, and there's order because in a larger organization there's a sense that order is a sign of success. Can you talk about how the way that we design our workspace, how it influences our work?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that you can kind of just walk into a space and immediately have an opinion, and probably you're right about what the culture's like in that space? Like, is it hierarchical? Do the employees have a high status rather than to senior management? I mean, it's all kind of plays out in the space. My take on it is that it has to do with kind of making the space lower the status between the kind of the people doing the work and the kind of management. And so if you can make that happen, that's why I think we see so much success in these companies. Not the only reason, but we see success in these companies where the people that are trusted with the leadership and the people that are digging the ditch all kind of in the same space, and like that barrier is gone. I think it's all about having a casual. It's all about having a casual feel to the place that makes you okay with being there, and whether bring your pet or whatever. This whole thing that we used to have where you had to kind of sit up straight in your chair and not eat at your desk and, all that stuff, all those rules, I think stole your creativity. I mean, it's like this, my mentor, Bob McKim, had a thing called relaxed attention. And I think that's the state you want your people in, is this relaxed attention, not this fear of, like I'm going to get fired kind of feel to the place. So, and you can see that at the D.school, they try to get me to put carpet on the floors, but I wanted people able to spill paint or do something on the concrete, and we could clean it up easily. And they, write on the walls and on the furniture and stuff. It's just kind of, you feel naughty. It's, you're like, you're not in your parents' living room. You're at the opposite of that. You're in a place where you can kind of, just be free to kind of express yourself. So yeah, I think it's space matters so much, and being in a collaborative space where you can see what's going on, and when the UPS guy comes, everybody jumps out and says, "Oh, is it for me?" It's more human in that respect as well. But we're really grateful and lucky that we're back to diversity again, where D.school has such diverse people that all you have to do is kind of put them in too small a space, and then they get to know each other, and they find, oh my God, I learned so much from this, this person who used to live in a favela in Brazil. That happened recently. And wow, what a different life this person's had. And so you're just like, if you have this open mind and this kind of thirst for understanding what's going on, then a space that just, that just allows for this kind of forced interaction, or the just interaction. One of the things that's most interesting about the D.school culture, which is not all that obvious, is that I call it an opt-in culture. So most places, you're there because you're being paid to be there, or you have to be there, or it's just like you haven't chosen to be there. Whether I don't mean necessarily the company or the building, but I mean this part of the building. So the D.school really believes strongly in this: get people to do what they want to do, and they'll be better at it. And so, like the D.school, I don't pay the professors. There's, 50 or 60 professors a teacher, but I don't pay them, which irritates some of them a lot. But that, all I'm trying to do is say, look, if you really, really want to teach that class, then you're going to be willing to do it on your own time, or you're going to be willing to convince your department that class should be counted in your teaching load. And the students, they don't get degrees, right? And some, the pop-up classes, which is, I think, more than half of our classes, you don't get credit for. So, man, the professor's there because they want to be, and the students are there because they want to be. This is a different feel to the place. And so in some ways, I think you feel that vibe because they want to be there. Contrast that to, corporate America, where, you're there because you have to be there to make money so that you can go water skiing on the weekend, or whatever your justification for not enjoying your day is. And that's just not going to be of the same vibe as is when everybody in the room wants to be there.
So you've been teaching at Stanford for 35 years. I'm much newer. I've been teaching now. This will be my 4th year, but I'm already starting to see all these benefits from it, both the students I interact with here and then in my own work. And you mentioned the exposure to diversity and diverse backgrounds. What are some of the other benefits that you get from teaching?
Well, there's a huge benefit about age. So I recently saw at TED last year. TED's coming up next week, but last year I think Norman Lear spoke. You know who that is Norman Lear, a little before your time. Norman Lear, and he said he's like 93, but he's just so full of it, full of life. And the interviewer said to him, "Norman, you're 93, but you seem so young. And how old do you really feel?" And he said, "I feel the same age as whoever it is that I'm hanging around." Right? So I basically hang around 20-year-olds, Well, my graduate students are about 26, but my main undergraduates are 20. I teach a junior class called Human Values and Design, and there's 80 kids in it, and they're all 20, right? So it's so you kind of, I'm still seen as not understanding, but you come into the room and there's, 40 skateboards leaning against the wall. I'm thinking, that's different. I drove here in a BMW and parked, in a lot, right? I mean, how different is that? But no, but it's just, it makes you feel so vital, to know what the kid's thinking and to have them challenge you about stuff and to tease you about, stuff. And I think it's the first time in history that these kids have as high status as they have relative to adults. Because I don't know about you, but like whether my father was better at me than something, he always did it because he was the father. Like I was better at tuning the car. I'm sure I cared much more about cars, but he did it. Or I had better reflexes driving at night, but I didn't drive. He did, right? I mean, it was just like there's a status difference, right? And now, with my daughter, anything technical, the kind of complete tech support, she's in charge. I don't think we've ever had that where the 15 to 18-year-olds have a role in the family that's the highest status you could be in that particular subject, right? And so they're worth talking to. It's like and I hear their music and I see what's really important to them. And early in my career, I would be on some kid about why his project wasn't that good, and he'd say, "Professor Kelley, this is a 3-unit class." And, I'm thinking, the kid's right. He's got another 12 units. I'm just 3 units. Why am I, and I don't know. It's just like you, by having that thing, is it? And that's teaching here. But you mentioned diversity. There's also, I went and spoke to the kids that are in the Saudi Arabian club. I don't know anything about Saudi Arabia, but I did after that. And, as I said, this kid came in who was raised in a favela in Brazil. And totally fascinating. Think about that. How do you get from? Who paid attention to you enough to get you out of that? And I'm very proud of Stanford because Stanford pays full ride for anybody like that. Anybody who can get in here who has need gets it taken care of. That problem's taken care of because we're after the best, the best students, not the richest students.
Yeah.
Right? We might be after the richest students too. I'm not sure.
So there's a Stanford professor, Robert Sapolsky, who did this sort of informal study about, if you haven't had a tattoo by age 25, you're probably never going to get one. Yeah. But do you think this exposure to younger people and to more diverse people, there's a way to kind of push beyond that? And do you think that has a broader implication given the way that our society is so divided?
Yeah, no, I'm trying not to be hopeless about our present situation. I really am. And we're doing a lot of work trying to understand people that have the opposite viewpoint as us. And instead of just thinking them as not that smart, we're trying to figure out what it is that they really value because we know they're smart, but they just, and so, yeah, I think that this trying to understand whatever the diverse point of view from yours and being open-minded is the key. I mean, it's like, it's hard to do. As humans, we want to judge, we want to evaluate. We want to squash anybody that's not our religion, I mean. And so it's hard to have that open mindset, or what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. But it's certainly going to be the way to kind of solve these big problems. The rift in the country is only way you can do it is understanding of the other. I mean, that goes for both sides, by the way, is understanding instead of just dismissing it. And we run into that all the time. One of IDEO's big clients is Planned Parenthood, and trying to understand. It's essential to try to understand what's going on with the people that are against it. Really understand that in order for us to, Planned Parenthood is about women's health. It's not all about abortion, and so how do we focus on that?
The types of things that you guys work on at IDEO is pretty incredible. At first there was this emphasis on physical product design with, great accomplishments like the Apple mouse. And then over the years, the projects started to broaden to include things like service design for banks and operational design for hospitals, which is very different than designing a mouse. So when did you first start to realize that this design toolkit, the way that IDEO operates and your processes, that it could be applied to just much broader challenges, things like Planned Parenthood?
I think our clients showed us that way to that. I mean, which makes sense because we're, somebody wanted to innovate in what happened for us in the best of situations, right, is we surprise the client at how innovative we are, that we come up with something they couldn't come up with. We just had that experience with Ferrari, and I love that when I'm a car guy in the Ferraris. And the chairman said, thank you very much. We wouldn't have come up with that on our own, right? And that's kind of what we were after, right? Doing something that's innovative to the point that it surprises the client. Well, once we had these clients like Procter & Gamble and AT&T and some of these we were doing products for, and they said, and we got the notice of the CEO when we were doing products, we were working for the head of engineering, right? Or the head of marketing. And once you got up to a level where the strategic intent of the person in the company was much broader, then they say, well, it kind of felt like, well, here's some creative guys. Let's put them on this other problem. Let's put them on this broader problem. We also had the fortune of, doing, projects for lots of those companies, which would be considered, kind of, I don't know what we called them, strategic problems, where they open it up to the broader issues in the company. So I'd say that, as much as we desired, basically as I said, we're kind of variety junkies. So if you show us something completely new, a service, we haven't ever designed a service before. Oh, what about the experience of checking into the hospital instead of the defibrillator that we just designed, right? I mean, it just kind of happened naturally. Now, and so what because of our intellectual curiosity and our desire for variety, we had to change the company in order to meet that demand, right? And so we started hiring people who could help us with those projects. So so one of my favorite projects is this school system in Peru called Innova Schools that we're doing. And we, in a place like Peru, the whole problem is what it costs, right? I mean, can you do a better education at a price that this kind of middle class or what you ever want to call the part of Peru that cares about that, do that? And so, it was, engineers would have not been really good at figuring that out, but we have business people on staff, and we have, psychologists and anthropologists and education specialists and stuff. And so the thing that drove that because we had such interest in doing meaningful projects, when they came up and we took them on, it felt good, and we just kept expanding, to the point where we're doing stuff that I can't mention that you would bog your mind. given that I was a guy in the 70s doing work in Silicon Valley, with my company was doing work in Silicon Valley, and we were basically designing plastic boxes around computers, right? And I think I'd have been happy with that the rest of my life. I mean, that's what we were doing. I mean, I didn't have any higher goal than that, right? And then, my partner, Bill Moggridge, got, who designed the first laptop computer, and he took one home and he said, this is terrible. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing. I don't know if you ever seen one of these, all magnesium case and just every little detail's gorgeous on it. And we took one home, and the software was on this kind of funny display, bubble something display, but the human interface to it was horrible. And he came back, I'll never forget, and he came back and said, this, using this thing is way too important to leave to the engineers, to the software designers. And so he got us in the business of doing interaction design right there, right? And so that's one of the first steps to doing things beyond products, was to do interaction design.
Mm-hmm. Were there any challenges in those early days of IDEO where the future of the company seemed at stake, or where you could have maybe gone on a path that would have ended differently for you?
Yeah, no, it happens all the time. I mean, the design firms tend to porpoise where you have too much work and you have too little work, and that seems to be the case. And my mentor, Bob McKim, when I told him I wanted to start a company, he said, don't do that. Don't do a consulting company. Don't do that. He said, you're going to be like laying people off and all the time, and you'll have too much work. He was right about that. We never had, we luckily it's been all up for IDEO since we started mostly. But you always felt like you were about to not make payroll, when you had a downturn. And I can remember not paying myself a lot in those days to do it. But every time you moved from to take on some big thing like interaction design or stuff, I wasn't sure we had the capacity to do it, and we weren't getting a lot of work. I mean, we weren't being hired. But the hard part, I think we were lucky. And once the thing got going, we started doing Apple work, and everybody was asking who was doing this work for Apple. And we were their own, there was no in-house design firm. We were doing the work. And once that got started, it was good. The real scary parts were earlier than that, where I was there were no salespeople. So picture you got 5 engineers or 10 engineers, right? And there's nobody understands sales, marketing, business, anything. We're just out there enjoying ourselves, I guess, or scared, one of the two. And I'd go into some CEO's office. I'll never forget the guy's name, but it was a company called Allsteel. And I said, I'd heard through somebody else that they were going to design a new chair, and they were taking kind of RFPs on designing this chair. And I didn't know what an RFP was, but I went in anyways. I thought I'd charm him into it or something. Anyway, and he said, well, thank you. He said, why don't you show me the other chairs that you've designed? And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy doesn't understand. Not only have I not designed any chairs, I haven't designed anything else, right? It's to speak up. So it's not like my portfolio is weak in chairs. It's just weak, right? And so we really had to sell this notion that we have a process that will result in a chair that's different from the chairs you're getting from the companies that are chair designers, right? And for some reason, more or less that flew, and the company was more stable after that. But there was a time. It's probably you'd have to have in any company. I think you probably have to have some initial success to keep the things going. It's most vulnerable right in the beginning. And we've had our times, but it's mostly never been in jeopardy of going out of business. It's not a very high reward business, but it's also not a very big risk business, right? You're not betting the farm, you're not building a factory and trying to make something, and if it doesn't sell, you're out of business. It's not like that.
David, you've done so many amazing things in your life, founding IDEO and all the incredible work that you've done there, founding the D.school, all the influence that exponential influence that your students have had on the industry, on the world. And there are many other things. You beat cancer. That's a pretty major accomplishment too.
Yeah, that was tough. It was tough.
What are you most proud of?
Um, well, I mean, I don't know how personal to get, but I'm actually most proud of, you talk about cancer. I'm most proud of that to the point that the benefit to my daughter. I have one daughter, and I had my perfect parent moment. She's in college. And so I used to see her every morning. I made her breakfast every morning of her life, basically, that I was around, and drove her to school. And so we have a great relationship. And, she got through the cancer thing, which was hard on her. But she's in college. She's a freshman. And one day she never, I don't hear from her at all like I used to. Like maybe if I get one text every couple of weeks, I'm happy. And so I hadn't heard from her for a while, and I sent her a text and I said, "How you doing?" And she wrote back, "Dad, I'm happy, period." I thought, oh my God, I've done my job. I'm so proud of that, Well, and I don't think I've ever said that cleanly in my life to anybody, so the fact that she can just say she's happy, that's pretty heady stuff for a dad. It's kind of dwarfs, the product we made for a Chinese company that helps with food or whatever it is. But there are some good projects, but the emotional stuff has to do with when I sit around, this is probably off totally. I do this all the time when I call bird walk, right? Get totally off the subject. You can cut this from your podcast, but when I sit around with I'm 66. When I sit around with a bunch of old men and talk about things, they have two regrets, that I don't really have, which makes we're on what makes me feel lucky. One is that they almost all, because they were captains of industry, they almost all say, "I didn't pay enough attention to my kids. I put my career above my kids." And I think they're quite sad about that. And the other one was, I did a job that looked good but felt bad. Right? They're lawyers and venture capitalists and financial people, and they did that job not because it was their passion that they were emotionally tied to it. They did it because society said this is a prestigious job. You'll make a lot of money, and making money is prestigious. And so I really feel lucky that I'm not in any of those two categories.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, David, for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
That concludes this episode of the Design Better podcast. But if you're hungry for more high-quality design education, head over to designbetter.co, where you can find videos, ebooks, and articles on design and what it can do for you. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on iTunes to help the rest of the world understand what design can do for them. Thanks for listening.